The Man in the Road. A long-haul trucker was driving his rig down a desolate two-lane highway deep in the Appalachian Mountains, somewhere around 3 a.m. The road was narrow, winding, and completely unlit, with dense forest pressing in on both sides. His headlights cut a lonely tunnel through the oppressive darkness. As he rounded a sharp bend, his high beams caught something in the middle of the road. It was a man, standing perfectly still, facing away from him. The man was dressed in an old-fashioned dark suit that seemed oddly formal for the setting. The trucker slammed on his brakes, the air horn blasting as the massive truck screeched to a halt just feet from the figure. The man didn't flinch. He didn't turn around. He just stood there, his back to the truck. The trucker's heart was pounding. He laid on the horn again, but the man remained motionless. Annoyed and unnerved, the trucker flicked his high beams on and off, trying to get a reaction. Nothing. Finally, he decided he'd have to slowly maneuver around him. As the cab of the truck began to pass the figure, the trucker leaned over to look out his passenger side window. He would later swear that as his headlights illuminated the man from the side, he could see the man's head was turned a full 180 degrees, his face staring directly at the truck with wide, unblinking eyes and the subtle, unsettling smile. The trucker floored it, not looking back until the sun came up. He never took that route at night again. The call button. In a quiet nursing home, a caregiver named Sarah was doing her rounds on the midnight shift. The facility was old, with long, echoing hallways and the constant soft beeping of medical equipment. Most of the residents were asleep, and the silence was heavy. One of the rooms on her hall, room 213, was empty. The resident, a sweet elderly woman named Elsie, had passed away peacefully in that room just a week prior. The room had been cleaned and was waiting for a new occupant. As Sarah walked past, the call light above the door of room 213 suddenly lit up, accompanied by the piercing beep, beep, beep of the call system at the nurse's station. Sarah froze. It had to be a malfunction. She went to the station, reset the system, and the light went off. A few minutes later, as she was in another resident's room, she heard it again. The insistent beeping from room 213. Her heart began to race. She walked slowly to the empty room and pushed the door open. The room was dark and silent, exactly as it should be. The call button, a small red button on a cord, was resting on the neatly made bed. As she watched, she saw the cord twitch, and the button was depressed as if by an unseen thumb. The light above the door flashed on again. Terrified, she backed out of the room, her hand shaking. For the rest of her shift, the call button for room 213 would go off intermittently. Each time she would reset it, and each time it would start again. The next morning, she told her supervisor what happened. The supervisor, a veteran nurse, just nodded grimly. That's just Elsie. She gets lonely at night." The customer at the window. A young man was working his first ever night shift at a 24-hour gas station on the outskirts of a small town. The store was brightly lit, a lonely island in a sea of dark fields and quiet roads. Around 2 a.m., he was in the back, stocking a cooler, when he heard a tapping sound. He walked back to the front of the store. There was no one at the counter. The tapping came again, this time more insistent. He looked towards the large plate glass windows at the front of the store and saw a man standing outside, his face pressed against the glass. His eyes were wide and unfocused, and he had a huge, unnatural grin stretched across his face. He was tapping on the glass with a long, dirty fingernail. The employee walked to the locked door and spoke through the glass. "Sorry, sir, you have to come inside to buy anything." The man's grin widened, but he didn't say a word. He just stood there, tapping. The employees started to get a bad feeling. He noticed the man's clothes were ragged and he wasn't wearing any shoes despite the cold. He decided to ignore him and went back to his work, hoping the man would leave. A few minutes later, he heard a scratching sound. He peered over an aisle and his blood ran cold. The man was no longer at the front window. He was now at the side window, closer to the back room, dragging his fingernails down the glass. The scratching was loud and deliberate. The man's grin was still fixed on his face, and his eyes seemed to follow the employee's every move. The employee hid behind the counter and called the police. As he was on the phone, the scratching stopped. He waited, listening, but there was only silence. When the police arrived, the man was gone. There were no footprints and no sign of him, except for long, deep scratches in the glass of the side window.